Welcome to Silent Stories Updates, where real emotions, real conflicts, and moments of justice come alive. If you believe in standing for what's right, this story will stay with you long after it ends. Today's story is about a man who was accused of trespassing on his own property by an arrogant HOA. But what the HOA didn't know was that he wasn't just a homeowner. He was the judge who had the power to shut them down completely. Music fades slightly. Narration begins, the security guard's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Stop right there. You're trespassing." At first, I thought it was some kind of joke. I turned around slowly, staring at the guard who stood on the edge of my driveway, one hand on his radio, the other gripping his belt like he was about to make an arrest. I had been walking through the backyard of my own home, checking on some renovation work that was halfway done. The house had been in my family for decades. My parents built it, every brick, every corner, every memory belonged to me. So when he said trespassing, I almost laughed. Almost, because the moment I saw Patricia Green, the HOA president, marching toward me with her phone raised, I knew she was serious. She wasn't just calling security, she was calling the police. That was the moment I realized just how far their arrogance had gone. They didn't know me. They didn't know that the man they were trying to get arrested wasn't just a homeowner. I was Judge Alexander Moore, and I was about to remind them what real law looked like. But let me take you back to how it all began. A few months earlier, I returned to this neighborhood after years away. My parents had passed, leaving me the house I grew up in. It was a little worn down, but still beautiful. I decided to restore it, repaint the fence, fix the roof, maybe bring back my mother's garden. But almost immediately, I learned how much the neighborhood had changed. It used to be friendly and peaceful, the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches. But that was before Patricia took over as HOA president. Now, it felt more like a military camp than a community. Within days of starting renovations, I began getting letters, unauthorized modification, violation of community design standards, failure to seek prior approval. Each one was signed by Patricia herself, like she enjoyed seeing her name stamped on other people's stress. I decided to attend an HOA meeting to clear things up. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. When I arrived, Patricia was sitting at the head of the table, flanked by her board members. Her expression said everything. She was used to control. I introduced myself politely. "I'm Alexander Moore. I recently moved back into my parents' house on Willow Lane. I've been fixing some things up." Before I could finish, she interrupted. "All exterior changes must be approved by the board." "I'm not changing anything," I said calmly. "Just repainting the same color and fixing what's broken." She looked down at her papers. "Uninterested. You'll still need to submit a form. Until then, all work must stop." I could feel the tension in the room. A few board members looked uncomfortable, but no one said a word. I filled out her form. I waited. Weeks passed, no reply. Then one morning, I arrived at the property to find a bright orange notice taped to my door. "Cease all construction." Immediately, that was the moment I knew Patricia wasn't enforcing rules. She was abusing power. I decided to ignore the nonsense and keep working. Everything I was doing complied with county law. The HOA didn't own my property. They managed shared spaces, not my land. But Patricia didn't stop there. One morning, I drove over to check the progress on the new fence. The painters were packing up, the scent of fresh paint filling the air. I walked into the backyard to inspect it, and that's when two security guards approached me. "Sir," one said, "you can't be here." I frowned. "Excuse me, this property is under HOA review. The owner has been restricted from access until the investigation concludes." I blinked. "I'm the owner." Before I could say another word, Patricia appeared, phone in hand, recording. "I warn you," she said coldly, "you're violating HOA orders. The police are already on their way." I stared at her, stunned. "You're calling the police on me for standing on my own land." She smirked. "We have rules, Mr. Moore. Everyone must follow them." I took a slow breath, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Patricia, you're making a mistake you'll regret." 15 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. Patricia jumped into her performance immediately, talking over everyone. waving documents, pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal. "Officer, this man refuses to comply with community regulations," she said. "He's trespassing and ignoring board authority." One of the officers turned to me. "Sir, can we see your ID?" I handed it over. He glanced at it, then looked back up, his expression changing instantly. "Judge Moore," he asked quietly. Patricia froze mid-sentence. "Yes," I said evenly. "And this," I added, pulling the deed from my folder, "is my property. You're standing on it. And she's accusing me of trespassing." The officer nodded slowly. "Understood, Your Honor. There's no issue here." He turned to Patricia. "Ma'am, the homeowner is fully within his rights. Please step back." Her face went pale. But even then, she refused to back down. "We'll see what our lawyers say about that," she hissed. I didn't say another word. I just watched her storm off. But she wasn't finished. A week later, I received another letter, a $5,000 fine for violation of HOA bylaws, and unauthorized property access. That was the last straw. I wasn't going to let her bully me or anyone else ever again. I filed a formal complaint with the county, citing harassment, abuse of authority, and violation of property rights. I had enough documentation to expose her entire board's misconduct. 3 weeks later, the hearing date arrived. The HOA board came in dressed in their best suits, trying to look professional. Patricia wore that same smug smile, convinced her position gave her power. But the moment I walked into the room, everything changed. They recognized me, not as Alexander Moore, the homeowner, but as Judge Alexander Moore, the same judge who had presided over several HOA-related cases in the past. I sat at the plaintiff's table, calm and composed. My colleague, Judge Simmons, presided over the hearing to avoid conflict of interest. The HOA's lawyer began. "Your Honor, the HOA was merely enforcing bylaws that protect the community's integrity." Judge Simmons leaned forward. "You're claiming you have the authority to bar a homeowner from their own property?" The lawyer stammered. "Technically, yes, under the no." Simmons interrupted. "You don't. State property laws supersede HOA rules. This is harassment." The room went silent. Patricia's confidence evaporated. After just 20 minutes, the decision was clear. The HOA was ordered to remove all fines, issue a formal written apology, and cover all legal costs. The county also began an audit of their operations after hearing from other residents who'd been bullied in similar ways. Within a month, Patricia resigned. The board was restructured, and the neighborhood slowly began to heal. For the first time in years, people started talking to each other again. Neighbors smiled. Yards were filled with laughter instead of fear. A few weeks later, as I sat on my porch, an older man from next door walked up, Mr. Carter. He had lived here longer than anyone. He smiled and said, "You know, Judge, I never thought I'd see the day someone stood up to them. You brought peace back to this street." I smiled. "It wasn't about winning," I said. "It was about reminding them what community is supposed to mean." He nodded. "And you did exactly that. That night, I walked through my garden. My mother's roses were finally blooming again. The fence was bright white. The house looked alive, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace." What I learned through all this was simple. Authority without compassion is corruption. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stand quietly but firmly for what's right. It would have been easier to ignore it, to let them push me around, to pay their ridiculous fines and move on. But if you let bullies win once, they'll never stop. Standing your ground isn't about pride, it's about self-respect. And justice doesn't always wear a robe or sit behind a bench. Sometimes, it's just a man standing in his own yard, refusing to be silenced. Soft emotional music builds, slow and hopeful. If you've ever been in a situation where someone tried to intimidate you, remember this: calm strength beats loud arrogance every single time. People like Patricia thrive on fear, but when you stop being afraid, their power disappears. Justice isn't just something handed down in a courtroom. It's something we carry within us. The quiet courage to do what's right, even when no one's watching. As the sun set over my parents' house that evening, I looked around and realized something beautiful. The place wasn't just a building anymore. It was home again. And this time, it was protected not by rules or bylaws, but by truth. Music softens, fading slowly into the outro theme. Thank you for watching Silent Stories Updates, where every story reminds us that integrity, courage, and justice never go out of style. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if this story touched your heart. More stories of truth, courage, and hope are coming soon. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and let your story speak for itself.